Today I am doing a video by special request for a subscriber by the name of Desiree. Hey Desiree. So we have a dilemma on our hands with someone who does very little scratch cooking, maybe none at all, is my understanding. And so because of that sort of lack of experience, it makes it really difficult for someone to be able to know what tastes good together and kind of worried to start with the amounts. Back in the day when I first started cooking, which was many years ago now, that was the case for me. I had to have a recipe. I did not understand. And it was only through experience and watching my mother and my grandmothers cooking and understanding the processes of what they were doing to put the flavors together was I able to then start to be able to cook from scratch. I mean, I can cook pretty much anything from scratch, but I also can elevate things. And one of those things is jarred sketty sauce. I typically make my own, and so a jar doesn't taste as nice to me. It doesn't taste awful, but it doesn't taste as nice. And so I like to elevate it to be more along the lines of what I would have if I had made the sauce. All the basic ingredients that I need to make my own, the way I make it, are in that jar. I just need to add to it. So what you'll need, you're going to need obviously a cutting board, but anyway, you're going to want some basil leaves, oregano leaves, and you can use dried. I'm showing you dried here. Basil, oregano, Italian seasoning. It just so happens that my basils are finally big enough that I'm going to get to use some fresh for the first time. So I'm so excited about that. But I'll give you the equivalent to the dried. It's not a big deal. One onion. If you like onions a lot, use a large one. If you don't like them so much, use either half of a medium one or a small one. You're also going to want some minced garlic. You can use fresh garlic or even garlic powder. But because I happen to know Desiree has the minced garlic on hand, we're going to use some minced garlic. The store, when I wanted to, because I stock up on tomato sauce about once a month, of course, the tomato sauce was nearly gone. And so we had to get jarred spaghetti sauce. I can elevate it, so I'm fine with it. It's just a whole lot more economical to make it yourself. So anyway, we went ahead and got the jarred sketty sauce. So I happen to have some of that too. And I'm going to show you guys how to make it taste like it's homemade. You're going to need one pot for boiling your noodles and one skillet for sauteing, or you can almost call it candying the onion. Because the way I fry it, it gets kind of a sweet flavor to it. It's really nice. I'm going to spice ours up with a little bit of habanero that I've made, some crushed habanero. I literally use the back of a spoon. Where is it? There it is. Literally the back of a spoon to measure how much. That's how much heat comes from that habanero. You want heat, you can add it in the form of red chili pepper or cayenne pepper or any other favorite method of spicing your food up. Just black pepper if you want that as well. We'll be putting a little bit of that on onions as they fry. It's really up to your taste. If you don't want it spicy, don't add it at all and it'll be fine. So let's get started. Here's another tip for you guys. Everyone watching, honestly, I know there's a lot of you out there that know this. This is the water for boiling my pasta. I don't care what kind of pasta it is. Maybe except ramen noodles because it's got such a major flavor packet in there. But anyway, you want to salt this water like it's the ocean. Don't be afraid to do that. The reason for it is the only opportunity that you have to add any flavor to your pasta is while it is cooking. So it will only get seasoned when it is cooking. One thing that I like to do sometimes even to add even more flavor to pasta depending on what I'm going to use it for is have an entirely flavored liquid that I boil the pasta in. I can show you all that another time if you're interested. But basically whatever you're cooking it in, it's going to help bring in some flavor. So I just wanted to show you so you're not afraid. This is what it should look like when you're putting salt in. And that's about what you want it to look like on the bottom. It needs to look like a whole ton of it. And that's what's going to make perfectly flavored pasta. Okay, so while I'm getting our pasta sauce ready and starting the noodles to boil, I'm going to get this skillet heated up. I'm going to put it at roughly about halfway. My stovetop cooks really hot, so that's actually probably still just a little too hot. Anyhow, you're gonna heat your skillet up and you're going to put some butter. Have your garlic on hand. If you're gonna add any heat to it, this is the time. And salt and pepper, which I have handy right here. So I will show you how that looks and we'll move on to the pasta sauce. All right, so we have about a tablespoon of butter in the skillet, just getting kind of hot. Don't need a whole lot. There's a lot of liquid in the onions themselves. So we just want to get it going hot. And we're going to add the onions. Now is when I add salt and pepper. Just a couple of pinches. I ended up using just half of that onion, so I don't need too much. And I've got to keep in mind there is salt in the jarred sauce, so be what do you want to call it? Be watchful for how much salt you add. So then I use a peppercorn medley. It looks like this. Ooh, let's see this way. And I have it in a grinder. I love this pepper, y'all. This is so good. It's got a little bit of a bite and a really good flavor. It's different than black pepper, and I love it. I just do a few squeezes until I see about the amount I want. Not very much. Almost as if you're gonna eat it just by itself. So we gotta remember there's other spices coming in here too. You just chop your onion into whatever size pieces you want, put it in the hot butter, and we're gonna let it go. And we'll keep an eye on it and stir it throughout. So when your onions look a little like this is when you're ready to go ahead and add your garlic, and if you're gonna spice it up, your heat at that point. I add about say about that much garlic, keeping in mind that the jar has garlic, so you don't want to overdo it. And then, just like I said, I use the back of a spoon because that stuff is hot. And then just stir it around. Meanwhile, our onions are starting. I am going to go ahead and slice this fresh basil to put in with the onions here in just a little bit. Normally, I would add that right into the sauce, but because I'm going to use this fresh, I'm going to go ahead and put it in with the onions. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, I am using a bowl so I can show you the amount of seasonings I use. I usually add it right to the top of a jar when I do a jarred sauce, but you won't be able to see how much of what. So I usually clean the jar with just a bit of water. Get some of that extra sauce out of there. Okay. All right, first thing I start with is Italian seasoning. Love the Italian seasoning. That's the main thing I use. And that's probably about at least a half a teaspoon. I generally don't measure. I just look at it, and when it looks like that, I know it's right. This is the basil that I would use if I didn't have some fresh. And I would use probably about that much. That's all the more basil you really need. And then oregano. Okay, I changed my mind. I want to add the fresh basil right here. I think my skillet, I don't know. I just don't trust putting it in there. So then, normally I just dump this right over the pasta and stir it all in. But for you guys, we're gonna do it like this, just so you can see how it looks. And the very most important thing to do is to taste this booger at this point. Yeah, that's not bad. It's a little on the sweet side. I forgot they did that. But it'll be all right. Okay. Then I'll show you what we're going to do with this. There's just two of us. There's enough sauce here that you can use an entire pound of pasta, or pound and what are those boxes? Yeah, 1 pound, and there's plenty of sauce. For us, it's just the two of us, so I'm making only half the pound, and I will have leftover sauce. So you're just gonna go ahead and add it to the skillet. Now, if you have meat in this, which you can do, we're just doing a meatless spaghetti tonight. So, we're not putting meat in, but ordinarily I would have, some sausage. Typically, I like Italian sausage. But since we're not doing that, I'm not draining. Now, if I had the meat in there, I would need to drain a good deal of the juices that come off of it. Then we just mix all of these up, and I will show you what it looks like on the plate with a surprise ending for later. Look how yummy that looks. And it's heating up while the sauce is, or the pasta is finishing cooking over here. And then I will put it together. It's not maybe a 1-pot Desiree, but it's close to it, because you'll see what I do with this sauce here in just a minute. Okay, I know it's probably a little hard to see. There. You're just going to take what you need of this sauce for the night that you're going to eat it. And in order to control the amount of sauce that is used, what you want to do is go on ahead and mix your sauce with your pasta. And this way you can be frugal about your pantry and be able to keep people from maybe pigging out on too much sauce and then not having enough for another night. And that is how it should look in the pan. So that's enough for 2 people in there. And we also are going to have some biscuits. And we will get Kyle in here to give a taste for y'all, see what he thinks of the elevated jar sauce. He hasn't had that in a long time, because he's pretty much only had my sauce in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. So anyway, we'll see what he thinks of it.
Okay, here we go. We're going to try whatever she said it was. Spaghetti sauce, whatever.
Elevated jarred sketty sauce.
There you go. Very good. She did a great job as usual. For most of the time. I guess 99.9% of the time. So.
You're a nut.
You did great.
Okay, so as promised, I am bringing you the bonus of how to make easy biscuits. Probably the easiest biscuits I've ever made. What you're going to need is 2 cups of flour. You'll also need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which I accidentally dropped right into the flour out of pure habit. A cup of milk. Whole milk is better, but you can use whatever milk you have. This happens to be skim, and it'll be just fine. There's also a tablespoon of baking powder and a tablespoon of sugar and 1/2 cup of butter that is melted and kind of cooling while I talk to you guys about the ingredients. You will need a sheet pan that is lightly greased to drop the biscuits on and have it ready when you are about to make your biscuits, so that you can immediately drop your biscuits onto the pan. And I'm going to show you a little something extra that I do when I do biscuits for a meal like pasta. Okay, so what you want to do is put your dry ingredients in first and then mix those up a bit, and then we'll add our liquids. This recipe is pretty cool because you can make it so that you can have it sweeter. So maybe you want something a little sweeter for a breakfast biscuit. But in this case, we're going to do a savory biscuit. So I've already added the salt like I mentioned. Sorry about that. And here's the baking powder. That was 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And here's the sugar. This is where you can adjust the sweetness. You can use 1 to 3, maybe even 4. I don't know if I'd go above 4 tablespoons, but for this, we're just going to use 1 tablespoon. And then I'm just going to take a normal fork and we're going to stir that the dry ingredients around. Just get them mixed up pretty decent, because when you mix this with the liquid, you really only want to mix it to a certain point, just until it's moist. You don't want to over mix it. You'll just make your biscuits tough. So you'll see as I mix it, it doesn't have to be very much. You also want to preheat your oven to 450 degrees and have it on the ready. And go ahead and have your pan already lightly greased and ready to go. Like I said, you're going to need to drop your biscuits immediately once they're done being mixed. So I'm going to add the 1 cup of milk and then the 1/2 cup of butter that I've let slightly cool off before adding. Now we're just going to barely mix it. Just get it moist. That's why it's important to go on and mix those dry ingredients first. That way you get all the baking powder, sugar, and salt where they need to be. So we're just going to mix it until I don't see a whole bunch of popping dry ingredients, which looks good to me there. So really that's about all you need to do. And then we're going to drop this onto the pans. But here's one thing I like to do when I'm going to serve a savory biscuit with something like pasta. I like to add, I don't know, maybe a couple of tablespoons of some cheddar cheese. And then just give that a light stir. And that would be it. So we are ready to drop these onto the pan. Now I lightly greased mine with some olive oil. You can use butter, you can use Pam, you can use Crisco, whatever you've got that you happen to have on hand, or that you prefer. So you're gonna wanna take, I usually use a couple of spoons. You're gonna want a heaping spoon, just like this. And I use a second spoon to wipe it off my spoon. You just let it drop onto the pan. And that's why they are called drop biscuits. So I'm going to finish dropping these biscuits and I will be right back. When you're all done dropping your biscuits, they should look something like that. You can have them kind of close. They do expand, but I don't really find it a bother if they end up touching in the end. They tear apart pretty easy. I'm also going to show you something else I like to do, especially when we're having pasta. It's not necessary, but it's what I like to do, and I will do that after we get these biscuits into the oven, which I'm going to pop into my 450 degree oven, and they are going to go for about 10, maybe 12 minutes. You want the edges to be a nice little golden brown. And I'll show you that when they come out of the oven, how they should look. But we're going to start at 10 minutes and then we'll check. And if they're not quite enough, we'll give it a minute or two more. Okay, so the secret to my biscuits that people generally like and don't realize I do is really, really simple. I just melt a couple of tablespoons of butter in the microwave. I use 10-second intervals in case you need to know how long. It doesn't take too terribly long. And then I just add some, well, let me go ahead and do here for you. I just add some garlic salt. And then I'll taste it, believe it or not, to make sure it's enough. I guess probably start out with about 1.5 teaspoons. I don't always have to add more. It really just depends on how much butter I've melted. And right away, I think it's probably going to be just perfect. So then when it comes out of the biscuits come out of the oven and they're still piping hot, we will take a pastry brush, like something like this is a silicone one, but you can get all kinds of different ones. And we will brush the tops of these biscuits with this butter. It's now in garlic salt infused butter, I guess is what it would be called. Okay, let me see what it tastes like. Yep, I'm gonna say that's perfect. So I will bring y'all back when the biscuits are ready to show you what they look like and what it looks like with the butter on top. Okay, y'all, this is how they should look. They can get a little browner on the edges here, but sometimes they don't. You just really want to see how it's cracking a little bit. That lets me know it's cooked through, and I don't want to go too far. Plus, I've already scraped the biscuits off the bottom, and if you notice, they're very lightly brown, and that's just perfect. You don't want them to go too far, or they'll turn black on the bottom. Yuck. So then we just take our butter mixture and try not to make a mess, which I've already done, and just coat the top of the biscuits. Excuse me if I'm in front of y'all. And that will give it a nice little garlicky, cheesy flavor. Go really well with pasta later, so. And you see I'm not putting a whole lot. It doesn't take a lot to add that little bit of flavor because it'll soak right in. But I'll tell you, it's really good to dip into some sketty sauce at the end. It's nice. And that's all there is to it. So the variations that you could do are, you could make, like I said, breakfast biscuits, put a little more sugar, and you could add some other seasonings that you like. This is such a versatile recipe for biscuits. Super easy, super quick, and you can add anything you want to it within reason to be able to make these. You have to be careful if you're adding things that may add some moisture content and adjust your milk and your butter accordingly. But as far as seasonings and spices go, pretty much the sky's the limit. So I hope you give it a try. It's really yummy. Let us know what you think of the biscuit.
One of her best biscuits.
Would you ask for it again?
I would ask for it all the time. I'm a bread nut.
We have a dog that wants a bite. That's the geriatric dog that some of you may know that I've referred to him as.
Here. Oop.
He can't find it.
I know.
There you go, buddy.
Hey, Bob.
Even the dog seems to approve.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, have a good time with this recipe, Desiree, and don't hesitate to message me if you have any questions.
If you like this, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.